It isn't fair that Google effectively eliminated its competition and crowned itself the head of online advertising. Let me put it this way. If the free market was a baseball game, Google positioned itself as the pitcher, the batter, and the umpire.
And that all businesses operating in Europe.
One of the uses of that data was working out which companies or apps it might target for acquisition. So very much using this data for its benefit in contrast to what was said to consumers about how their data would be protected.
Well, for more on this, William Kovacic joins us now from Clifton in Virginia. He's law professor specialising in antitrust at the George Washington University. He's also the former chair of the Federal Trade Commission. Welcome to the program, William. Now, this is the latest lawsuit against Google, which basically accuses the search giant of abusing its monopoly in online advertising and colluding with Facebook in order to shut out rivals. Do you think there's any truth to those allegations?
The documents that are quoted in the complaint in many instances are blacked out, so we can't see exactly what was said. But if those passages do indicate, for example, that Google approached Facebook and said, let's make peace and not war here, let's allocate the way in which we compete, that would be a very serious infringement, serious both for Google and for Facebook.
Now, these 10 Republican states have decided to go it alone in this lawsuit, even though there were several other Democratic states that also worked to build this case. Why do you think politics have been involved in this decision for these 10 Republican states to go public now?
I think in some ways you have a genuine disagreement about the best strategy. The case brought by the state of Texas and the other Republican states is being filed in the state of Texas. They have demanded a jury trial, so these allegations will be presented for a group of exalted experts, but of ordinary citizens. So they've picked a technique that perhaps, in their view, gives them a greater prospect of success. We're probably going to see today the filing of yet another case by another group of states, many of them headed by Democratic governors, where they again are going to pick another strategy. So part of what is interesting in this collection of efforts is there is a diverse, overlapping set of approaches to try to take down these companies.
Now, it comes a week after the Federal Trade Commission and more than 45 state prosecutors launched legal action against Facebook, accusing the social media company of buying up rivals illegally and stifling competition. Now, as someone who formerly chaired the Federal Trade Commission, which other big tech companies should be worried right now?
At the moment, I would be very concerned if I were Amazon. I would be very concerned if I were Apple as well. That is, they would be next in line. And a number of the concepts that the public enforcement agencies at the federal and state levels are using would ultimately point in their direction too. And we already see, as your introduction pointed out, that these companies are facing serious challenges from other competition authorities around the world. So within a couple of years, we could see all four of the tech giants facing very serious challenges to their position around the world.
In October, we saw Democratic lawmakers release a report after an investigation over more than a year that basically calls for the possible breakup of some of these big tech companies and calling for reforms to the law in order to make it harder for them to gobble up the competition. We're seeing a growing number of lawsuits being filed by states of all stripes. Do you think there's enough appetite here for proper legal reform of the sector?
I think there is. I think that we're going to see our parallel paths to control. One is the litigation of competition law cases in the courts, but the other is very serious attention to creating a new regulatory framework, which will have as one ingredient of its remedial toolkit the possibility of breakups. That step is already underway in the United Kingdom. It was launched yesterday in the European Union. And there are the possibilities that other jurisdictions will be the same. So we are going to have two paths to the same destination for greater control, possible restructurings coming from new legislation that imposes a regulatory approach and litigation in the courts. Those are likely to come to a conclusion at roughly the same time, 2 or 3 years from now.
Okay, Professor William Kovacic, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you again for joining us on the program.